We're going to start off, three of them giving a little background on themselves. I'm going to ask some initial questions to kind of kick things off. And quite frankly, I've got a lot of feedback from the survey. So some of those questions are going to be related to things that you've asked on the survey. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to use, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button, a chat button, and a raise hand button. So if you have a question as we go along, feel free to type that in and I will facilitate the questions at the conclusion. And then that same goes for the chat. And then if you want to ask a question or make a comment directly, once we kind of start wrapping things up, feel free to raise your hand and we'll click the button. Joseph or I will you can ask the question verbally. So again, I want to thank the three of you all. And again, Dirk, once hopefully we get connected, for taking the time to do this today. And so we're going to kick things off. Ladies first, Sue, going to start with you. If you could introduce yourself and let the folks know of your history in the hobby and your interest and your connection.
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm really honored. My name is Sue Nelson. I'm the owner of Railroad Memories, located here in beautiful Georgetown, Colorado, home of the Georgetown Loop Railroad. I've been doing this 35 plus years. My late husband, Bill, and I started our shop up here. We opened it up in May of '87 and did our first auction. It was just a little small 5x7 catalog with 10 pages and maybe 10 pictures. Kind of just blew up from there. But we've been fortunate over the years to handle some amazing pieces, some wonderful collections. And it's, obviously my focus is definitely West Coast, Colorado, narrow gauge, that sort of thing, just simply because of where we live and the history involved. But I've been able to handle things from all over the country, just some amazing stuff. So I get to, I'm not particularly a collector myself. I do love William Henry Jackson, depot prints and that sort of thing. We were big collectors when Bill was alive, but unfortunately I had to sell most of that because I still had a 15-year-old daughter to take care of. But I don't have to collect, guys. I have hundreds and thousands of pieces I'm surrounded by all the time. So I get the best of both worlds. I get to enjoy it and look at it and picture it and describe it and then send it off to the next caretaker. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thanks, Sue. Let's move on. Again, purpose of this was kind of get some perspective from different aspects of the hobby. So we'll move on to Russ Fierce, longtime show promoter. So Russ.
Hi, I'm Russ. I've been promoting shows actually 32 years this fall. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but developed a lot of friends over the years. I mean, dealers and attendees, and seen a lot of changes. I was the third show in the Chicago area, and still there's 3 shows, and I enjoy it. I personally collect railroad signals and Midwest Railroad items and telegraph items. And I really am a big fan of the Chicago Northwestern and the Milwaukee Road, as well as other some obscure lines, the Chicago, Milwaukee, and Gary, and Woodstock and Sycamore, Elgin and Bell. Well, I'm not going to go into it. But and shows have ebbed, and I think they're a little bit on their comeback right now. So that's about me.
Thanks, Russ. Next up, we've got Eric Whiteman in sunny California. Eric?
It has been so sunny out here. A lot of rain, but so hi. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so yeah, my name is Eric Whiteman, and we have Western Railroad Americana with my partner Jason, and I've been collecting for about 20 years. We're both collectors. Started out many years ago, model trains, did all that, and started taking pictures. But then once it came to the artifacts, that's kind of where it all landed. And that's what made the most sense, and I enjoy it. We enjoy it a lot. We sell a lot of collections for people. Last year we had a large plate collection, a lot of good Eastern plates, some Norfolk and Western, big power. But we also do pretty much all facets of Railroadiana, lanterns, locks, keys, you name it. And then also have the eBay end. So we do a lot of direct stuff, but eBay is also a necessity at times, and a lot of stuff will go there to meet new owners. And yeah, it's a good place. I prefer direct, but eBay is always good because it's you can't sell it all to one spot. So eBay is a good market. So a little bit of everything: direct sales, eBay's, and both collectors. So yeah.
Okay, let's start there. So folks that participated in these Zoom events know, I'm 41 years old, and fortunate to be in this hobby. I've been collecting hot and heavy, I call it, since 2014. So, I didn't know anything pre-internet, if you will. But you started off, you and your late husband, you started off as a catalog auction, and then switched to an internet-based auction. Still offer the catalog, don't get it that way, but you made the transition. And Eric, you mentioned eBay. Sue, I'm going to start with you. Talk a little bit about that transition. Was that a rip the Band-Aid off situation, or did this hobby slowly transition from the print catalog to more of an internet-based catalog? And then Eric, after she concludes, if you could talk a little bit, well, I'll ask some more questions specific to eBay, but Sue, I'll let you kick that off as far as what you've seen, really more with the internet-based auction.
When we did our very first auction, we got the membership listing for the RCAI, and at the time there were 1,000 members, and we sent out 1,000 catalogs to members all over. And that was kind of where we started. And from there we sort of had people that kind of became real constant subscribers. I think we started asking for a subscription fee in the beginning. But as the years went on, definitely the internet did make a huge difference. And, I have to say, at least with my business, especially with the auction system, my custom auction system, when I started that, it literally changed my bottom line 40%. Just because it opened it up to people that, there were still people going to shows and that sort of thing, but the travel and all of those expenses really play into it for collectors. And boy, when they can sit down in front of their computers and do this, it changes, all of it. So yeah, I've seen the internet. The internet's been huge for all of us. Definitely, I definitely believe that. But I also think on the eBay side of it, eBay, unfortunately, there's a large percentage of fraud and deception that goes on there. So I have clients that refuse to do business on eBay because unless, I'm sure they, would do business with Eric and Jason and the people that are established, but you see things pop up all the time. That Santa Fe lantern has gone up how many times? And it's continually asked to be shut down. And it just keeps coming up. So that on that side of it, I think the eBay part of it has been tough, but the internet part in general has been great. It's definitely changed things.
And Sue, while I've got you, just an assumption on my part, but back in the catalog days versus the internet days, did you see a Denver and Rio Grande lantern in your catalog days? Did that go on a more regional basis? And then when you got involved in the internet auction, did that take it more nationwide?
To a certain extent, yes. I will tell you, one of my biggest Colorado buyers at the time. He's not doing as much anymore, but he's in England. He lives in England and
Wow.
he loves Colorado Midland stuff. And he comes out to Colorado once a year and he's still doing that. I think COVID sort of slowed him down a little bit, but there is a fascination with Colorado, California, Nevada, Arizona, narrow gauge. And I think just that West Coast history really has a huge audience throughout the country.
So what's Sue saying to everybody that's on the call today? You heard it here first. There's somebody in England with a bunch of Colorado narrow gauge stuff. So
Colorado Midland.
remember, you have to drive on the other side of the highway when you get to start picking Colorado narrow gauge in England. So that's great, Sue. Thank you. Eric, let's talk a little bit about eBay. You know, you're in thousands of sales on eBay from everything. I mean, I know what I bought from you personally. I mean, it's everything from a pass to a lantern to who knows what. You've been in it a long time and sold everything coast to coast, international even to some extent. Talk about what's happened in the last 10 years with eBay and you know, just personally, I think eBay's kind of collapsed in the last couple of years. I think the fear of the 990s of selling on eBay and the IRS and everybody's business, you know, sending tax forms on has concerned people. I really personally, I think I saw a change when the court decision came down. It's called Wayfair in Kentucky, but the Wayfair court decision that allowed eBay or required eBay, I guess, start charging sales tax on items as well. But talk a little bit, if you don't mind, just eBay start to finish in your sphere. And like I said, you've been on there a long time. You continue to be on there, and I know we'll be there in the future.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's, you know, for lack of a better term, kind of the necessary evil at times. Back in the day, low fees, very easy to sell on there, and absolutely there was a huge plethora of items. It's definitely gone down a lot, the amount of items that are on there. Like if you do a search, the taxes have hurt a lot on both ends for the seller, because they've got to report, and the buyer, unless they've got a resale permit, they're paying taxes when they check out, and that's affected a lot of people. The last couple of years, I've seen a big shift with not so much the higher end, but more like $100 to $250 range. Surprisingly, a lot of items are going across the ocean. I can't tell you how many lanterns I've sent to Asia,
Really?
Japan, Korea, China, Thailand, which I was really surprised, but it's been very popular of late. So I mean, you know, direct sale, you know, if we could always do that, I prefer it, you know, but you know, once in a while you get eBay, you meet somebody new and you find out that, you know, they're not aware of what's out there, and you can meet a new friend and you get someone that's interested in purchasing new items. So it does help in that sense. You get a good foothold there. But yeah, I think I totally agree with Chad. It's changed a lot the last few years. I mean, still a great place to sell because you're getting a large audience, but it's changed for sure. So, you know, the nice thing is with the auction format, and like I know Sue can attest to this. I mean, you get two guys on it, and that's it. You know, you can really set the prices, and that's what helps ultimately. You know, your consignor who you're selling for, so makes more money for them, and they're happy.
Yeah, we're getting Dirk on here now, but I think this is a perfect entry point for Russ. As far as the shows go, you know, Russ, I'm going to insert my opinion here. Again, observation over the last 8.5 years that I've been in the hobby, but you know, when I got in, I didn't know any better. Everybody said shows were on the decline, but here post COVID, I really see a resurgence of shows, and it's been very encouraging. So Russ, maybe you can talk a little bit about the internet impact on shows, and then you know, maybe the resurgence of shows and what you think has brought that on.
Sure. I think initially the internet hurt the shows a little bit. I know there was one dealer who used to come, and take a number of tables, large number of tables that just went straight internet. Which is unfortunate, but a lot of people try and do both. One of the things I like about shows is I collect heavy stuff, signals and things, and the shipping on those things is just prohibitively expensive. I think the internet to some degree has helped, not so much eBay, but Facebook and some of the other sites. I have some younger attendees that live on Facebook. That's how they find out everything. So I try and do a little bit of advertising as well, as much as you can on Facebook, but to get the word out. I like all the different venues for collecting. The nice thing about shows is you can kind of kick the tires, as they say. You can actually pick up the piece and look at it. I mean, Eric and Dirk and Sue, they do great jobs with photography, but sometimes on the internet, some of these sellers, it looks like they're using an Instamatic camera and scanning it. You have no idea, any detail on the item. But did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. The other side of that, we all have a lot of friends on this call today that, no offense to the internet or internet.
Oh, no.
You don't get the social aspect, and there's a value to the social aspect of a show and events around, live auctions or shows or things like that. So completely agree. Dirk has joined us. Dirk, real quickly, if you don't mind, just kind of give a brief overview of your business and your time in this hobby, which I know is immense.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought we were 8:30 Eastern time. I must have fouled that up. I'm sorry. I could have sworn I saw that. All right. So yeah, I guess it has been a while that I've been in it, but I feel like I'm a youngster. And I don't remember exactly what all you were asking me. I got into this kind of by accident. I used to be a dealer, and I started working for an auctioneer in 1985 and just had no idea I'd wind up in the auction business. Help me again with what the goal of the question was.
Yeah, so the question, just give a little background, and we're just kind of kicking things off. So kind of a panel discussion here. So
Right.
This is a great question for you, Dirk, because you might have missed it, but I asked Sue, and I know your business. If you go back to RCAI archives of the past, you advertised auctions coming up, but we're talking, and this might particularly applies to you, the change between like a print live auction versus an internet-based auction with live auctioneers and Invaluable and the various auctions platforms. What's that meant for the railroad items that you've sold, over the last, say, 10 years, that's really become a thing, if you will?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean as far as the difference between a live auction without internet.
Yeah, the difference between the interest in your auctions pre-internet and then, now that we have all the bidding platforms and access.
Yeah.
South Kentucky and bid on an auction south of Kansas City in 2 seconds. So what's that?
It's to me, it's almost one of those things where the more things change, the more they stay the same. We may be able to say that we're on 2 or 3 platforms and have 1,000 registered bidders, but it still, to me, boils down to a couple of hundred people, and if that. Before the internet, you'd run an ad and the phone would start ringing. And in fact, that's what I really enjoyed about Railroadiana auctions, was that it was like what I called the old days. When you ran an ad for an upcoming auction of Railroadiana, the phone started ringing almost immediately. They were like, "Where's the catalog?" Well, it's a month away. I'm not ready yet. And whereas with as the internet set in, other material, you'd run an ad and you'd check for a dial tone, make sure everything, you paid the phone bill because nothing was happening yet. It all happened at the last minute. So to me, you get a lot more. It feels like you have more people looking, but the participants, folks would show up if they had to, or they left a bid. And now it's easier to bid from home and to get on and bid, and you're not quite as sure how many there are. I feel like it was a little bit like when we were talking a minute ago about the shows. I think the internet was a double-edged sword for sure, but it hurt it in that people quit bringing their good things to a show, and so other people quit coming to look for good things. So then the ones who weren't online quit bringing their good things because there were no buyers. And so it was kind of the same with the auctions in a sense that you'd have a big crowd if there was no other way to do it. But then with the internet, there wasn't your crowd dropped down to 50 people of the hardcore folks because the internet made it easier to participate without having to, as you say, drive. And then there was a social aspect, which a lot of people liked driving, and it is kind of like a small convention at times when you have a big selection.
Yep, absolutely. So the three auction folks and Russ, we'll have you chime in here at the end. And a lot of folks want to say this hobby is dead, or we have an aging population in this hobby, which we do. But all three of you all have sold some really, really high-end items in the last, let's say post-COVID. Let's be honest, last couple of years. Where do you see this hobby going in the next 5-10 years? And what do we as an organization and we as people in the hobby that want to ensure this thing is left to someone else, what do we need to do to ensure a future? So Sue, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Eric and then take it from there.
Okay. In my opinion, this hobby is not going to die. Collectibles are not going to die. I mean, I oftentimes would compare this to, let's say, Civil War collectibles. I mean, look at the generations that have been collecting that. And that was at one time, we're talking aging, and they're still collectors. There will always be a fascination with history. The special thing about railroad is obviously the provenance is on every single piece pretty much, with the initials being on everything. So that's never going to be lost. And I see younger people coming into this all the time. I think the big thing is we need to continue the education part, which you guys have done a fabulous job. I mean, the RCAI just your live feeds from the shows have been just great. I mean, that's just showing people so much. And, my price guide's the only book that's on the market. And I always say, it's not meant to be a Bible by any means, but it is a guide. And it is something that everyone can pick up and look at and see that there are some lanterns that are worth a lot of money, and locks and keys and on and on and on. There are certain categories of Railroadiana that I think are certainly a little bit softer. I would put China and silver into that category. But when I look at the statistics on my auctions, I can see exactly how many views I get on certain categories, especially the way that I write my auctions. And obviously lanterns are top, builder's plates, locks, keys, and then it gets down to depot and that sort of thing. But there's no question that the top pieces are still commanding great attention, great money. It's not going anywhere. And as long as we continue to educate and show people what's out there, it's just gonna add to it.
Eric?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think what you guys have done is great with RCAI, and it's awesome. Getting back to the future of the hobby, I agree with 200%. It's not going to die. Would love to see it like, coins and cast iron toy banks and all that stuff, but it's a little different world. But I think given what it is, railroad history, the impact of the country and the significance that what it actually meant to this country at one time, I think it's actually undervalued. Really, I mean, some of these examples say, hey, there's 5 or 6 known of this, or 3 known of this. It's not a bad price. You get into other aspects of things in collectibles, and you're talking 3 or 4 known, and it puts just about all of us out trying to afford it. I mean, it's a totally different market. So I think all the, like anything else, the good stuff will always be there. It's always going to be strong. And if you go to our website, as far as educating people, we have a huge photo gallery. So we got a lot of good lanterns, locks, stuff like that. As far as, getting new guys in, educate them, hey, here's what's out here. Here's variations for lanterns and brass tops and different colored globes. If you go to the site, we got a lot of pictures for getting guys in, taking them, through everything kind of step by step. But all in all, I agree with Sue. I think it's always going to be there. And I think if you're buying, by quality, by rarity, it's always going to be strong. I don't think you're going to have any problem.
Russ?
I would agree. The high end items, the rarer items sell extremely well. And the hobby is aging, but at the last few shows, I've been seeing more younger people come in, and they buy a lot of things. I think our biggest struggle will be getting the really young kids in. I see a few kids come in with their parents, and by kids, I mean, less than 12. And kids love trains. Thomas has really helped the hobby because kids love Thomas. And then I think through one of our things should be to help kids transition to the real railroads and the artifacts from the railroads.
And Dirk, I'm going to alter the question and viewpoint a little bit for you. So you deal in everything. The other 3 folks on the call here are pretty much Railroadiana specific, but I mean, you've got Petroliana, you've got coin op, you've got rare antique furniture, etc. I mean, you deal with it all. Eric made a very good point about it being undervalued to some extent, and my good friend Steve Spalding has told me from the beginning, if people ever figure out how undervalued Railroadiana is as far as Americana goes, we're all done in the hobby because none of us will be able to afford it. What's your take on that, and what are you seeing? I mean, you've had some unbelievable through the McHugh auctions, some unbelievable results as far as Railroadiana collectors go. But $23,000 for a B&O overall sign to a Petroliana collector is just a rounding error, or again something cheap. What do you think?
I liked what Gert said about the Thomas the Train. Little things like that can help that we might not be able to predict that'll help in the future. But I've always felt that the Railroadiana hobby has something of a farm team, in that I see guys work for the railroad begin to get interested, and not many hobbies can have that conduit to new collectors. So I think that's kind of a fortunate thing because as I think somebody said the other day in the warm-up meeting, it wasn't until later that I had the money to start buying things. And that all seems to come later to me, the sense of nostalgia, the discretionary income, the time, the interest, all those things. And so, sometimes I want to say, I've been hearing for 35 years that there's no young people coming into the business, but somebody must be. Now, that said, certain things are dead and nobody new is coming in. There's more sellers than there are buyers. But as was pointed out, the historical aspect of it really will, I think, carry this. I'm not a good one to ask about how, I love things that speak to you and are historically important, and and like Sue said, I mean, you know, and even the other panelists mentioned that there is a really strong historical connection. You know, there's another, there's, you know, the whole opening of the West, and so there's a lot there. But it's hard for me to see it as undervalued. I can't quite grasp that. I like the idea of whatever the market, an auction will ferret out the value, and I don't see how I don't see that on everything. I'm sure I feel like there are things that are a little bit light at times. But I've wondered, you know, some of the adjustments we've seen in other areas of general antiques. I've wondered if it wasn't the case that it was, and all we can do is debate this, because who can say, but that it wasn't a little overvalued, and that's why we feel like the prices are down. Maybe it's an adjustment that's correct. So, you know, I think that the hobby is strong, and you know, good things are going to do well, and the middle and lower end are going to drop off, partly because of the efficiency of the internet. You know, bringing a lot more things out than we realized were maybe available, and that's just going to be a part of that. I wonder if I wonder if the pandemic and the time at home didn't help us in that some young people became aware of things and got interested. I felt like there was a little boost there in new faces, younger people. So I think that may have helped us a little bit, as Kurt was saying about the shows and seeing some younger people coming in. But I just, you know, I don't know how to comment on the idea, like what Steve was saying about that. You know, if folks realize how undervalued it is, it'll really take off. I'm not sure. I coming from in my world, $23,000 is a lot of money. So.
Well, you mentioned the pandemic, and we all know how baseball cards got hot during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I, you know, dug out my Ken Griffey Jr. 89 baseball card, which was kind of the first thing that I collected because they got hot. But
it was a revival and maybe new interest because there was time, and you know, and I wonder if that'll carry over. I wonder if we'll see a wave for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing that you know, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and Russ can probably speak more to this, but the fact that we went through the pandemic and there were no shows or nothing to do, and we sat at home and watched auctions close. I mean, it became a form of entertainment. So yeah, I think you're dead right there. So you mentioned it. I think you kind of kicked off the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is what's hot and what's not. So you mentioned dining card china and silver, and I mean, you've sold Lord knows how many zeros you can add and commas in the amount of dining card china and silver you sold in your career. So you should certainly know that. But in your opinion, what's cooling off, and what do you see coming down the pike as the hot items?
Again, I think lanterns are always going to be number one. Obviously, builder's plates have been huge. There's a tremendous market for builder's plate. But lanterns are number one. Locks, you know, brass cast locks, again, from that, you know, particular roads, they definitely get a lot of attention. The simple key. I mean, look what some keys are selling for. It's amazing. And those keys are not necessarily from collectors that want locks and keys. Some guys just do the locks, some just do the keys, but certainly some like them together. So there's markets for both, I guess is what I'm saying. I am seeing, you know, China is definitely coming back a little bit. Membrino is a perfect example of a pattern that definitely ebbs and flows. There were points when membrino pieces were just, boy, didn't match. Sugar bowls and chop plates and all that sort of thing were just bringing four figures hands down. And then it really quieted, it really softened. And I am seeing it coming back a little bit. And obviously the rare pieces, still command a lot of money. What's softened? I mean, I think things like, I mean, at least what I see, like bells and whistles, well, maybe not so much whistles, bells. I describe bells as white elephants. They are wonderful if you're looking for one. And some people will just put, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 on them, and they're still sitting on those things because the average person, it's not something you can put on a shelf and display. The weight, and I mean, bells and switch stands, and that's all of that big stuff is hard. And so the market gets really tough to sell things like that. And honestly, I'm at a point where if somebody offers to send me a bell for an auction, I tend to tell them to sell it locally. Put it where somebody can come drive and pick it up from you, because it's too costly, you know, to crate and freight that stuff. But
Bells
yeah,
really
that's
when it's dark in your basement and you're trying to navigate to the refrigerator or the bathroom.
yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's hard, but I would say that what's really soft, I don't know. I mean, I look at cap badges and they get great attention if they're rare, and advertising. I think each category has those pieces that stand out, and each category has the pieces that are much more common and don't get a lot of attention. So I think Eric really said it well when he said buying quality and quality and rarity that's going to hold its value. That's not going anywhere.
Eric, and you can kind of approach it, I think, from two different perspectives. You can approach it from your eBay perspective, and also, you know, what you and Jason have done recently, both with the website and then your auction from your East Coast builder plate, number plate consignor.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest things I would say. That 20 years ago, and I'm not ripping on Eastern stuff at all. It was a lot more affordable, less price. You know, that's one area that I've seen a pretty big price increase, which is great. It's awesome. I mean, some of the color cast globes I could have bought years ago from Eastern Roads that you walked away from. See what they're bringing now. The plate collection that we handled, you know, Virginian steam, N&W steam. I mean, some of it kind of surprised us. You know, we knew they were good, but they did really well. You know, and that's great to see. So, I agree with Sue 100%. I think lanterns are still top dog. They're very hot. Plates are great. Your keys are strong. Really good passes are strong. But yeah, stuff like that I've seen just over time, like wax sealers is a good one. You know, I mean, 20 years ago, you could buy a whole bundle of wax sealers for cheap, you know, and now you get a good location and they go through the roof. You know, they do really well compared to in the past. On the eBay end, yeah, it's still, I would say, you know, the more common stuff, you know, it does get hit price wise, but you know, the good examples, the Santa Fe bell bottom, the slick top, reliable with a cross Corning globe. There's a lot of those out there, but every time there's a buyer on eBay, there's always somebody looking for it. It's very popular. So some of the, you know, as collectors, we like some of the more obscure roads at times, but you know, your tried and true stuff, Santa Fe, UP out here, Santa Fe, UP, SP, always going to have a good market. But yeah, I think just from the takeaway, I think rarity and quality is probably the way to go if you're going to be looking at keeping stuff long term.
And Dirk, you also have handled it all: China, silver, whistles, silver plate, number plates. But you have a unique perspective, I think, on porcelain, and sold a lot of porcelain and a lot of gate signage and stuff over the last few years. And what's your take on hot items and where it's going? And, you know, I guess I'm asking a question. Now, you don't necessarily have to divulge it, but, you know, your porcelain sign buyers or your gate sign buyers, are they railroad collectors or are they just sign people?
Yeah, I think mostly railroad, but but there was, there is some crossover, as you already kind of pointed out, to be had there. And it pays to get it in front of them through things other than kind of RCAI. And so that seemed to make a difference. But boy, it's like everyone said, it's like the top half of every category, and the bottom half are two distinctly different things. And we're promoting that here by saying, buy all the best, buy the best you can. But so, and you had asked me earlier, and I kind of didn't expand on it. I lost track of it, but that's in all, almost, there are categories where it takes that top 90, the top 10 percentile piece to get anybody excited, like cut glass or brown furniture or something. But most of the categories, the good things are doing well. Through, in general line. And of course, as has already been stated by folks that know here, same with the Railroadiana, with some areas that maybe are a little softer and bigger margins. But so yeah, the signs, I feel like there was a crossover. I think that Petroliana, as you pointed out, helped to boost that. Folks will do that. You're wanting to buy something and you're getting pushed out of one market. You'll start, the dollars will start chasing things in kind of another market, so to speak. And I think we saw that a little bit. And I think that's worth looking at when you're, promoting something. And then I think the railroad, the pure railroad pieces, though, those guys push those. But some of the more exotic ones, there was that Santa Fe sign that had so many colors. I think that appeals to more than just railroad people. So I think there was some push from general sign buyers on some of the porcelain signs. But again, yes, that's as far as what's hot, it's all the better things. And so maybe that is a component of fewer folks in the market to go after and absorb the middle and lower end. But I also think there was a lot of it, and that's become a lot more accessible now.
Yep. And Russ, I'm going to kind of adapt the question for you a little bit.
Okay.
We go to shows and you'll kind of hear some vendors maybe complain about they didn't sell anything or had no interest. Sometimes you have to have the good items to bring the interest in. What's your advice to folks showing up to a show?
Change your items up. If something you've been showing for 5 years is not selling, leave that home and bring something new. It seems the new items generate more interest. Also, occasionally at a show, you get someone who's cleaning out a collection, and that draws attention. But vary your items and price them reasonably. I mean, don't give the items away, but don't expect the moon either. Unless it's an extremely rare piece, then you can ask those prices. That would be my take on it.
Absolutely. And this kind of goes to a question that we've already got on the opposite end of the spectrum. And Dirk, you brought up my point that, I've only been into this 8 years, and honestly, my legitimate excuse for that is I didn't have the resources prior to that to get into this hobby and do it in a way that I wanted to. So Sue, we're going to start with you and go through, and this is something I think as RCAI, we're going to try to do a better job of, is bringing younger people in the hobby and making sure they understand you don't have to go buy a $40,000 lantern to be accepted in the hobby or have fun, enjoy the hobby. So Sue, what's a great entry point item for you?
Or, you'll notice when I do an auction, I've got $10 pieces up to $10,000 pieces, but I don't ever want to discount that not everybody's got deep pockets. And I know, I've had people say to me, why do you waste your time with that? And in the way that I look at it is, first of all, I'm opening up my market to everybody. I'm not closing it off to the people with the deep pockets. And those people come back. And they start out maybe only spending, $20, $30 with me, but the next time they spend 200 or 300, and that, it's a growing thing. So yeah, I don't want to put together 500 lots of $10 pieces, but I'm certainly not going to discount that by any means. And I think that's a good place to start. One of the things I used to do when we did do shows, and it's been a while since I've been able to do that, and I would love to get back into the shows again, like everybody. I put on a couple shows up here, and that was fun, and I'm going to try and do another one this next year. But if you've got a box full of junk keys that you can't give away, Burlington Northern or whatever, some steel locks. I mean, I do not like to deal in steel locks, and I see them on Facebook all the time for a lot of money. But if I see a little guy come along and he's interested in a steel lock with a key,
Yes.
I give it to him. I mean, you just see their excited faces. I mean, those are small things that those of us that, are really in the hobby can afford to easily do. And it just gets them excited. Even the silly little wooden whistles that little kids run around the shows with, those, it's a start. So I think that's a fun thing that we all should try and focus on with the kids. I think we tend to push the kids towards the model trains because they're all sitting there and that's where they want to be. But a lot of the shows, they don't have the model trains, and fair enough. So there are other ways to get them excited about it. And I don't mean to just say little boys, little girls can be just as excited about it. So
Eric, what about you? What's the entry point for you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I agree with her 100%. Years ago, a kid walked by the table and it was just a hat. That's all it was. But it's like $5-10 hat. And he wanted that in the worst way. And his parents were like, "No, we're not buying that." And I said, if he has it, and they're like, "Well, yeah, sure. You okay with it?" And everybody's okay. Hat's yours. And that's where you got to start. Like I said, myself, I was there years ago. Model trains. I didn't even know what a lantern was. And then you get into taking pictures. There's always segues. You got to start somewhere. So I think that's a great way to do it. And years ago, they'd have guys that would buy $100, $200, $300 lantern. And you fast forward 10 years, and they've decided they want to get some rare item, more quality, and now they're spending a lot more money. So they're willing to step up and get some of the other stuff. So that's the best way to do it. You got to start somewhere. And giving them a freebie at the show or a little kickback, and you just never know. So that's the way to do it.
Russ?
I agree 100%. We have dealers that will give away, relatively inexpensive or common items to kids. One item I think we could give away more is old copies of magazines. A lot to a collector, a magazine from 1990, trains or model railroader has almost no value. But to a kid, oh, they'd love that. I agree with Sue, give a kid a common key or, a piece of, a small piece of china, maybe it's got a chip in it. You can ignite a passion for something in a child.
And Dirk, I'm sure you hear about this and more than just Railroadiana, but across the hobby aspect. But what other sectors of the hobby think as far as entry points or how to get younger people involved?
Yeah, I don't know that I've these are all neat ideas, and in fact I've it was just recently I asked, because I always ask, how'd you get started? And one of the guys, and he had a big collection of irons, but wasn't much, but someone had given him some. And and so 30 years later, he's got 400 of them. That's a question that everyone asks. And I think this idea of giving an interesting small item, for me, it'd be something that has neat patina or is kind of dated or has the interesting look. I know that we used to promote a show of just a general line antiques show. And so you would see people bringing, coming as a group and bringing kids and dealers talking to them. And I do remember kind of like I think folks were saying here, the parents saying, no, or don't touch that. And the dealer saying, go ahead, you're not going to hurt anything. Let them, let them do it if it's all right with you. So while I can't draw on any specific things, I think everybody had good points here, and it could be applied in other ways. That just keeping it fun and open, and looking for opportunities to light that little fire.
All right, so switching to the opposite end of the spectrum, and I've been getting all the surveys, putting all the data entry in, and something that has popped up multiple times, and I think it's really important, both from RCAI to start talking about, but the hobby as well, is estate planning. And let's be honest, and again, it's taken people that are much more seasoned in this hobby to educate me that, this time in the hobby, let's call it the last 3 to 4 years, with the unfortunate passings of some giants in the hobby between Brian Mayer and McHugh and Eric, you've handled, the right collection as far as builder plates and number plates, and Sue, you've had multiple estates, and Russ, I know folks have come to your show to liquidate things as well. Let's just approach this. What do more seasoned, older folks need to be thinking about as it relates to their collection? Even somebody like me, I mean, walk out in the street and get hit by a bus tomorrow. As far as families being left with the collection and how to liquidate it, or do it all at once. I mean, you don't throw it all up on eBay. But I would really like all 4 of your take on some, again, not legal advice, not certified financial planning advice, but just solid advice from folks that have handled estates and assisted families after the fact, if you will, with massive amounts of stuff, and let's just be honest, a lot of money. So Sue, I'll start with you.
I think one of the most important things that you can do for your family is to have an inventory. I can't tell you how many collections I've handled where so often it was a private thing, and the family looked at it as junk, and the collector, and when the family comes and says, what do we do? And without an inventory, first of all, there's costs involved to prepare that for a family. It's a simple thing that you can start to do. Simple spreadsheet, take little stickers, start with number 1, and put them, put a little sticker on the bottom of your lantern with number 1, and put it in a spreadsheet. If you want to put what you paid for it, great. If you keep those records, that doesn't really matter, because what you paid 10 years ago and what you're going to get for now is totally different. But that's the first place to start. The second place I would say is to, leave your family with some options, whether it be auction or someone that you trust that would come in, just like you would with your own will. You put people in charge of, where to go. Do the same thing with whether, again, it be an auction company or a good friend or selling it outright. If they have options, if they have that information, then they can take care of it. In my opinion, obviously, as an auction company, I feel like, especially when you're talking quality pieces, auction is the best way to capitalize on the value, because it only takes 2 people, like we know. And, the bottom line that goes to the families can really make a big difference. And if ultimately that's what you're hoping is, when we go on, that your families can benefit from your years of doing this, then those are things that they need to be made aware of. And, I would say that's definitely one of the most important things that I would look at first.
And we'll move on to Eric. And Eric, again, you've handled a lot of estate type of pieces, and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I agree with her 100%. Having a plan is the main thing. In inventory, some ballpark figures, educating the family. The main thing is that they understand it's not just junk sitting around. That family members and kids and stuff, they're like, what are we going to do with all this junk? It's always junk, and they just see it kicking around. But then when they start realizing that some of the money comes in, they're like, oh my gosh, it's actually worth something. So it's good to educate, your family, let them know, like Sue said, keep an inventory, have a good idea of, who you trust, have a plan, for when the future, if something ever happens, it can happen to anybody. We should all have a plan, whether you're, 30 years old or 80 years old, you should have something, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So I agree with her 100%. It's good to have something set in stone for your family.
And Dirk, I know, again, we're kind of looking at you for a broader perspective than just Railroadiana, but you
Oh my
a lot of this situation.
Yeah, I think as others have kind of said in different words, communication is a big part of this. Once in a while, you'll encounter a situation where the people are like, I don't know a thing about that, I have no clue, you never really. So, communicating with your family, and then now we're up against that same thing that we've tried to address here 2 or 3 times, is educating, your family and getting them interested. So that they don't think it's junk, or so that they realize it's not junk. And so some of this might be useful to the kids of a collector as much as anything. But I, like Sue said, an inventory, or possibly more fun and less laborious, would be a video. It might accomplish the same thing and be a little more fun if you, and that's something that, a kid is more likely to initiate than the collector themselves. But they might say, hey, let's get together, a Saturday or 2 in the next few months, and 2 or 3 of them, and talk about this, so what to do. And what I hate is when folks will say, well, I need to do something with this so my so-and-so doesn't have to deal with it. Well, you spend all that time collecting it, you enjoyed it and love it, and now you're going to have a big empty spot in your house. It used to be, and everybody's different, and it's none of my business. That's not my business. But I guess all I can say is, if it were me, I think I'd do these things that folks are talking about here and suggesting. Have a plan, maybe designate an item or 2 that you want to go to an institution or to a particular friend, but make all that real clear. A lot of communication will cut down on things and confusion at a time that's difficult. And but have a plan, and that, like Sue said, or I think, as a collector, what to do and what not to do. You're probably going to be the most you're going to have the best judgment on who to select to come to the home to talk to these folks when that time comes. And so because in other words, what I'm trying to say is, you're going to know who you want to handle it based on what they do and how they do it. And so have all that worked out, and do the planning and the video and the communication, and just get it all down, and then continue to enjoy it. I just, to me, I'm kind of sometimes surprised that folks will want to sell it all, take care of all this while I still can, so that somebody else doesn't have to deal with it. And I can see that, but these are all good ideas. And I think that, again, a trusted friend to guide someone, but that in combination with a good, whatever approach you choose, whether it be an auction or whatever that might be, someone to kind of chime in if you can have that, and not everybody has that option. But anyway, communication and planning seem to me to be the things that will help to make this easier. And and talking to some whatever approach you're going to do and making a decision on, and they've got a phone number to call when the time comes.
And Russ, I'm going to change it up a little bit for you. As far as insurance and, making sure your contents are protected. I know you've got some experience and knowledge in that. You might pontificate a little bit about that topic, if you don't mind.
Sure. I do want to agree with everyone that education is key. One thing I would recommend is make sure your family knows the valuable pieces. You don't want to list your $5,000 lantern at a garage sale and sell it for $5. I hear of things like that happen. I mean, it's great for us collectors when we find a bargain like that, but for the collector's family, that was a big financial hit. Also, see if your family wants to keep a few pieces to remember you by. It's like if you dispose of Dad's entire collection, what do you have to remember Dad's passion with? Those are two things. Along with the insurance, I would also mention a will. People mentioned communications and instructions. You need to tell your relatives and your estate what you would like done with it. And before then, you need to insure the valuable pieces. A valuable piece, you can list an item specifically on a policy. So I'm going to list my B&O lantern, and I'm going to state that the value is $300. And then that's insured not only for theft, but also generally for breakage. So if you accidentally break the globe on a rare lantern, that's going to be covered. It's the same as listing your wedding ring on a policy. And then there's also more general coverage for, let's say you can say, well, I'm going to get $5,000 worth of coverage for the collection. So you may not get more than $500 a piece, but if you've got 300 pieces, I mean, you're only going to get up to the limit you've chosen, but two types of insurance for specific rare items, and two, then something general for the collection as a whole, the more common pieces.
Yeah, and I think, Russ, you make a great point. I think that's something we're going to try to do a better job of at RCAI, is educating folks on insurance and underwriting and things like that. I know it varies state to state, but there's still some general rules that I think we could do a better education for our members on. We see it all the time with gun collectors and folks like that have their act together on insurance. And I think we as RCAI can serve a space there. So I'm going to turn it real quick and we'll start opening it up to questions here shortly. But this is going to be a little bit more personal, and some of you all might have to think about it. But of all the items you've handled in your career and you've sold that doesn't remain in your collection, Eric, I want to know the one item that you're like, man, I really wish I could keep that. Like, Jane Doe that just bought that, man, I wish I could just hang on to it. So Russ, I think I'm going to start with you, and what item have you seen at one of your shows that you're like, that's really cool, and the show's over and setup's done, and you're sitting there on Wednesday after the Sunday of the show, like, man, I should have bought that. What is it?
Oh, buyer's remorse,
Yes.
both ways.
Of course.
That was that really cool book on signals. Or there was that signal item that I should have bought. I mean, I can think of something that was offered to me for $500 years ago. I should have bought it. I mean, I had the money. I mean, I didn't want to necessarily spend that much, but if I hadn't bought that, I'd be like happy as a clam, because they're now going for like 2 or 3 times that. And they're hard to come by. So that's one example. The other example is I get it home And why did I buy this? You know, that's the flip side of it. Why did I buy this? Or, you know, in an auction, I get caught up in the bidding, and it's like, I can't spend more than $200 on that item. But invariably, when I'm in an auction, I end up spending more than my limit almost every single time because it's the competition. So as for pieces I maybe have sold personally, I'll admit I'll say I'm a collector, but there's a portion of hoarder in there as well.
Well, and I understand getting caught up in the auction because the other three on this call have all benefited from me getting caught up.
Like that, yeah.
So Sue, we'll turn to you. I know you've handled tens of thousands of pieces of Railroadiana. What's the one piece that you were like, man, I wish you just keep that in Colorado and
I actually was able to privately broker the silver filigree pass that belonged to General Palmer.
Wow.
And that was probably one of the most historic pieces, especially as with the Denver and Rio Grande and everything that goes on here. It was beautiful, and it included his actual wallet that that he would keep it in. And I brokered it. So it was one that was really kind of hard because I would have, but it brokered at the time for $25,000. Now, who knows? That was probably 15 years ago. So, yeah, that was one that I think I would have loved to have hung on to.
move to Eric.
That's hard. I've always said it's important that when a collection comes in, you take a deep breath, you look back, and you make sure that if there's something you want, you speak right away, because once it goes out the door, that's it, you know. So if there's something you like, you got to grab it. But there's been a couple little, you know, oddball lanterns here and there that most people probably would understand. But being a big Santa Fe guy, an 18 SF-RY wire bottom twist off. Had a chance at one of those, and that went out the door. I missed that. I have the bell bottom, not the R, but the RY. So it was kind of the twin to that. So I do miss that, but I know where it went. So maybe someday I can get it back.
And so Dirk, again, I'm switching it up for you. So let's hear about a piece, a railroad item, and then let's just hear about a general auction item that you've sold that you're just like, man, that's really cool.
Well, and so, yeah, but now the one I've been thinking of is dual purpose, so I can answer both those with one. But that's the good part about this. You get to enjoy these things for 30 to 90 days or a year, obviously, in some cases or more. And so that keeps me pretty satisfied. Plus, I live in a 900 square foot house, so there's you know, I'm not a big collector, but there was a painting a couple of years ago, and it happened to be so we have a kind of a school of art here that is regionalist, and it's a style from the 30s. And this was a student of a local artist here, and a painting from the 30s, and it was an industrial scene rail yard in Kansas City. So it had all kinds of, it hit a number of buttons, and I wasn't in a good position to buy it, but I would have liked to have had it. But I would have been out anyway, because I wouldn't have been in the running, as it turns out, but I couldn't have bid on it anyway. But fortunately, I was at least a little bit satisfied in that regard, because it went way beyond what I would have thought and would have bid.
That's fantastic. I mean, that I think that's what's great about what you all get to do and what you get to
Yeah.
you know, you can be attached to it, but at the same time, it's got to be some type of mental capacity not to get too attached to it. So, you know, I might be handling something or trading something and you know, just kind of sit there and look at it till it's traded and kind of fall in love with it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, taking a valuable appendage for it. So, yeah. Well, I'm gonna open it up to questions now. Just a reminder for those of you that are participating, if you want to ask a question verbally, just hit the raise hand button Feel free to type something in the chat or the Q&A. I think we've covered most of the Q&A at this point. So we'll give it a couple seconds there for folks to ask questions. This is probably more specific for you. We do have a question related to the Illinois Central French Quarter pattern. If you could talk a little bit about trends that you've seen there on that particular pattern, that'd be fantastic.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yes, Sue, I'm sorry.
Oh.
French Quarter pattern in Illinois Central, what you've kind of seen there over the
Yeah,
last.
definitely softened on that particular pattern. Those used to sell for 2,000, 2,500, 3, and I think the last couple I've sold for, gosh, they've gone down as low as $700, $800. I mean, I think there are certain ones that are a little rarer, and I can't tell you exactly which scenes those fall into, but that's definitely a pattern that has softened for sure. And it's too bad because it's beautiful. I mean, I often compare it sometimes to the Southern Pacific mission plates, but the mission plates I think would still be easily 3,000 up because you don't see those, the SP pieces, but you do. And I'm seeing a lot more of the French Quarter plates come out.
All right, I'm going to move. First hand I saw was Joseph Hudson. Joseph, fire away, buddy.
Yeah, this question's for Sue and Eric and Dirk and Russ. You can chime in if you want to. Y'all may have this information, you may not, and you may can give it out and may not be able to. The bigger ticket items that we're seeing in these auctions, and even at sales too, are how often are we seeing the 40 and under crowd, the younger crowd? And I say younger because I like to consider myself in the younger crowd. How often are we seeing the younger crowd buying these big ticket items, or are these longtime collectors filling holes in their collection that they meant to 40 years ago and now they're finally getting the option to?
Honestly, what I've seen, the older, more seasoned collectors have sort of put it on the brakes. They're all saying, you know, they've got there's things coming up that they'd like to have, but it's like, you know, I've got everything. I really don't need to spend this money now. So I would say, I mean, it's not always the younger people, but I'm seeing the older people a little more reluctant to really, I mean, older meaning really seasoned older collectors, the ones who have been around for a long, long time. Those are the ones that I'm seeing, especially like with express stuff, for instance, that's definitely those collectors that were the ones that were the most enthusiastic have just sort of stopped. They've just sort of said, we can't do it anymore. So it's hard to say. I mean, I've not seen a 20-year-old jump in there, if that helps any, but it's a good question. And obviously, you know, the younger, when you're talking a lot of money, not the younger people usually don't have that kind of pocketbook, but it's definitely not just the older seasoned collector that I'm seeing doing this.
Eric, we
Thank
had
you, Sue.
we had a question, and I was going to ask this of you anyway. There's been I guess the Railroadiana hobby, when you and Jason got the opportunity to sell the Ron Wright collection, that was obviously on the complete opposite coast of where you are. And if you don't want to divulge it, completely understand, but talk a little bit about the logistics of that, how you guys handled that, how you did it, and got the plates, I guess, to you in California. And then, you know, they went, I assume, everywhere from that point forward. So I guess there's just been a fascination to that whole process.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistics involved, that's for sure. I mean, it was basically, there was a connection because, you know, the daughter lives an hour away. But, you know, it was putting them basically everything in the pods unit and getting it across here. So Jason went out, he flew out there, and broke his back moving all that stuff and putting it in a container, and basically got it ready for pickup and came out this way. So it was dipping his feet.
Yeah, so at some point, somebody had the opportunity to see a pod going all the way across the country that had every
Say,
number plate that you could possibly find, just, crisscrossing the interstate system. We got a couple of raised hands here, so we're going to go, I assume it's Vic Ryerson. We're going to allow him to talk and ask his question. Vic, you'll have to unmute here.
Yeah, I got it. We were talking about, these artifacts and ascribing value to them. And I was wondering about the role of museums and other institutions in both the acquisition and disposition of railroad artifacts.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Vic.
I think I'll jump in and say, I know some museums, they get so many items, they could never display them all, so they turn them around and sell them. So if that's what you want to have happen to your items, or if you don't want to have that happen, you need to specifically look into that ahead of time. Because a museum only has so much space. I mean, I know an instance where some rare items were not necessarily Railroadiana, was given to the Chicago History Museum from a manufacturer's collection. And they were told, the manufacturer was told, well, we'll take it, but we're going to tell you we'll never display it, which is just a shame.
I was going to ask Russ about insurance and whether, and then I'll segue into the current topic. How much of it would have to be appraised, and is there a shortcut like the video and things? And then possibly what part of the question here might be that it's pretty involved to get any value from that donation. You've got to have an airtight appraisal that is subject to scrutiny in order to donate something at a nice level, nice high price.
I would say with most of my items, I mean, they're not famously, expensive. You're able to just list them and schedule it. Well, they call it scheduling an item, but certain things, the higher the value, the more likely an appraisal is wanted initially. Like jewelry is like that. You almost cannot just schedule jewelry. You have to have an appraisal. And it has to be a recent appraisal.
So folks could have their best items appraised and save the money on the other and kind of try to just group it and hope,
Yes.
Yeah, good.
And the problem is finding qualified appraisers for Railroadiana who are willing to spend the time and do it.
It won't be cheap. It could cost a couple $100 an hour to 100 to 200.
Well, and appraisers have also been put under a different scope due to the fact that people were just able to put values on things and write them off. And so IRS came in and said, if you get something appraised, the appraiser has to get 3 comparative sales. And that means research that's unbelievable. If you're talking something that we've only seen 1 or 2 of, and you have to have documented 3 comparative sales to come up with the appraised value. So it's almost become, I mean, honestly, I get calls all the time for appraisals, and the first thing I say is, are you doing it for insurance or are you doing it to sell? Trying to figure out a value. Because if you're trying to figure out a value, don't waste your money. You're going to have to pay to find out what someone is telling you it might be worth, and it doesn't mean it's going to sell for that. So I mean, I think appraisals really fall into a tough situation. And I've heard so often too, that even with a loss, even if you've had the appraisals, the insurance companies, you really got to fight them to get them to pay up. So it becomes a real tough thing. Do I want to even spend the money on this? Is it worth doing? You know, that's something everybody kind of has to weigh privately, I think.
And we got to look, this has been fascinating, and folks, keep the questions coming in. We're going to go long, and I hope folks don't mind that, but we'll keep going and get these questions answered. So Eric had a question come in back to the Wright collection, just as far as trends. Ron obviously had a vast variety of domestic and even foreign steam plates. What was the most interest in as far as what the Wright collection yielded for you all, and what did you see I guess the high prices on?
Yeah, I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry. The most interest for
Just you know, what plates I guess garnished the most interest as far as the Wright collection goes.
Yeah, I mean N&W steam's always very desirable. He had plenty of that. That was hot. The PR plates. I mean, the Pennsy fans out there. There's tons and tons of Pennsy guys. Virginian steam, very popular plate. Those are some of the big ones, I think. And, you know, anytime you get superpower is always going to be good. You know, from California to Maine, doesn't matter where it is. Any superpower plate's popular. And again, your popular roads. N&W's got a lot of followers. Same with Pennsy, and he had plenty of that. But he had some great Canadian plates too. You know, and we had a lot of interest in those. A good portion went to Canada, but there was quite a few that actually stayed in the country, back to New York and stuff like that. So there was a lot of interest there as well.
And Sue, you've handled some various estates as far as phenomenal builder plate and number plates over the last couple of years, and Dirk, you have as well. Just comment on the plates. I mean, to me, you know, I don't personally collect diesel plates, but diesel plates are off the charts from even when I started, in my opinion. Comment on builder plate, number plates, Sue, and Dirk. I'm going to swing to you and also add whistles to that, because you had that Missouri collection that had a bunch of whistles in it. So we'll let you kick off.
Yeah, Bill, there's no question. I mean, obviously narrow gauge plates get great attention, but yeah, I'm with you, Eric. I handled the Esquivel estate. That guy Dick Zinn and I went out to California and picked up 220 plates, and it was a lot of work. we rented a Suburban and strategically placed those in the center of the Suburban. I called someone to see how much weight I could carry in this thing before it would break in half. But yeah, he had a fabulous collection, and I just finished liquidating all of that. That was several years I spent selling some great plates. And yeah, the N&W, the Pennsy, the J1s, and they just, it's crazy. And the diesel, I agree. Diesel plates that I think probably 20 years ago, I'd be lucky if I got $50, $75 for, easily several $100s now. So there's a lot of attention on that particular category for sure.
And Dirk, I'm going to kick it to you, and I'm going to add whistles for you because
yeah, so that's a good sign. That's a good sign for the hobby there. A couple hundred, $50, $75, and now, hundreds. These guys are killing me about these plate stories because I can't seem to get those collections where you drive there and come back in a Suburban. I go in a Suburban and with 6 people, and then we each drive back in our own U-Haul truck. So I'd love to go get a plate collection. I had office girls, driving 26-foot U-Hauls out of Ohio and Nebraska and everywhere else. So, but yeah, the whistles are something I wish I could get some more of, because we just kept seeing them going up and up each time. And then of course it was marked. That was even better. And then Santa Fe was even better. So, but I don't have, we haven't had, plates for probably a couple of years now. So I can't really make a good, add anything to that on the market for the plates.
Well, and I think I'm gonna, this is a question that was texted to me, so let me think how to gauge this. Well, Sue, we'll start with you.
Ladies, ladies first.
I'm not trying to divulge business secrets or suppress prices. Sue, did you think the SP lantern would go as high as it did?
Honestly, I thought it was going to be between 35 and 40. That was sort of where I thought it would go. Obviously, my consignor was thrilled. That was from the Frank Kidd collection. Frank is 92, wonderful man. It's been great that he's been able to witness this. And I think his family was sort of concerned that he wouldn't, but by golly, he's a feisty guy and hanging in and doing well. And I think that the great thing about that is this stuff is not getting cheaper, and I mean, I know we talk about the values of railroad, but for those of us that have quality pieces, I would take that as, wow, I've done good. Hopefully I've invested in something and I get to enjoy it, but I've also put money into something that my family is going to benefit from someday. And I think that's wonderful. And I know there's the people who, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't believe that, and on and on and on. If you were selling it, you'd be clapping your hands. So, I don't think it's right to judge anybody who bid on it. The person who won it, congratulations. Thank you to everyone who did bid on it. And I was thrilled that I can say Railroad Memories sold it. So,
Yeah, and Dirk, I'm going to spin it a little bit different for you because during the Pack Rat auction, you obviously had some phenomenal high-end lanterns. Sue, I think everybody in the hobby will admit the SP lantern had a frame that was equally as rare as the globe that was in the frame that helped the value. Dirk, you handled a lantern with a globe in it that the frame probably didn't even cover half of the buyer's premium. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, and I wanted to say earlier, we were asking about the buyers on some of those higher end things, and I don't know, I can't say exactly how old, but I bet he was younger than me, and we've seen a lot of aggressive buyers in that age range, and also, again, as I said, newer ones wearing BNS and see wearing hats from the railroad they work on, and coming in and starting on different maybe not at $40,000 lanterns. So that was good, but and those were all lanterns that he had picked, that Pack Rat had picked over the years, and he had, the stories of where they came from would make you cry, and what he paid for them. But that's, I don't, it kind of speaks for itself. I'm not sure what else to say about that one, and the other pieces there. It's just as we've learned, it's when the right pieces turn up and the good stuff is doing well, and you never know where the next one's coming from.
Well, I think Sue made a great point about, the consignor actually getting the enjoyment of seeing the value coming back. And that gets back to the balance of estate planning, in my opinion, is,
I agree. When I said that earlier, that is a kind of a something for every individual to weigh, because what little I have, I've got one piece that I'd kind of like to know the final chapter, the final story, and then again, there was a collector here in Kansas City who still has. He just kind of didn't want anybody else to have these things that he had. He was a phonograph collector and had things that only one or two were known of, and that was his goal, was to die with them. And I thought, wouldn't you like to know a little, see if you were right about your assessment of it and that? And so that is a kind of individual decision on whether to see the final chapter or enjoy it and, not have an empty shelf.
Well, and I just want to say, Frank was offered $20,000 for that lantern and he turned it down. So that's why I started it at $20,000.
How long ago was that?
I just sold it in my last auction. So
No, I mean,
it's
that he
close.
was, that he was,
I didn't ask him, but I
I'm
think
just
it was
curious.
probably within the last couple of years.
oh, yeah.
For some people that don't know, how much did the lantern end up going for?
It was 51,250, and then there was a 10% buyer's premium.
Yeah. Huh.
We're gonna start winding down, so if you have any last questions or comments, feel free to chime in. But while people are thinking about that, I'm gonna, back to comparing to Petroliana, you always hear the term investment grade piece. Okay, so I watched a Facebook deal or no deal auction last week on Facebook that Cougar Petroliana sign brought $130,000 on a Facebook deal or no deal piece, one of only.
Really? Oh, wow.
And again, investment grade piece, we saw Morphy's auction with the Husky sign, etc. So I'm going to go to all four of you all, and not to continue to focus on high prices, but and hopefully everybody will pick something different. What's an investment grade piece that people should be on the lookout for? And Russ, I'm going to start with you this time.
Okay. First of all, I want to say, if you're going to spend money, any amount, buy something that you like, that you will enjoy. Don't buy something because you think it's going to appreciate in value, because it may not. I mean, it quite well could, but it may not. The earlier, more obscure pieces are the ones that you might consider investing in. But I used to sell securities. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. You always have to keep that caveat in your mind.
Eric, I'm going to swing to you, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on the behalf of lanterns because that's near and dear to my heart. But I would say pre-1900 tall globe lanterns. I know that's kind of a broad specification, but in Western is always good. I'm not trying to be biased, but I think the good Western stuff, obviously. But yeah, pre-1900 tall globe stuff, even good clear globes. Somebody's, well, it's just a clear cast, but the good quality clear cast extended base. Obviously, any early Western brass tops and Eastern good brass tops. I think those are always going to be good, and I think those are good investments.
Dirk, I'm going to swing to you.
Well, I agree with Russ. I think but maybe you can position yourself a little bit. But yeah, I think go for what you love and what you enjoy. But if you keep working at it and you follow your interests, which will lead you into these other things where you educate yourself, you curate, maybe you upgrade and things, and you go for condition and do what you enjoy, and just do what speaks to you, but maybe keep growing. And if you keep growing, you're going to get into better condition, better patina, the next important, another something a little better than what you maybe ever had. If you're waiting for that super rare one, you might be a while before you get your fix to get to buy something or even bid on something, maybe, as if you're going for a super example. But I just think, like Sue was talking about, if you thought, I don't know, all I know is I think this is a really cool builder plate. You bought it for 50 or 75 and and now it's 500. That's, nothing's wrong with that. That's better than buying a boat because it was worth less the minute you leave, and so, but one thing I like to see here that I think is real interesting is I'm pretty sure, and I haven't researched this, but I'm almost positive there aren't anywhere near the number of historical societies for Petroliana as there is for Railroadiana. And so, you know, I mean, obviously everybody loves, you know, there's a lot of car guys and it all spills over, but I just think, you know, I mean, I know we've got like 69 historical societies on our mailing list. And so that $100 and some $1,000 sign, I think the hobby's in pretty good shape, and that it's guys like you and things like this that'll keep it that way. But I think there's a lot of good future here.
Sue?
Guys, that's a hard question, but let me kind of go to China, since that's the one area that, you know, I feel is a little soft. I think if you're gonna collect China, I think you should focus in on the pieces that are nice display pieces, talking cups and saucers, demi sets, sugar bowls, you know, sauce boats, not so much dinner plates and platters and that sort of thing, because those are hard to display, and those historically don't bring what the smaller, more desirable display pieces bring. So, you know, if you're going to get into China, obviously stay away from anything with hairlines or chips or cracks, and lean towards the patterns that are harder to find. There are some patterns that are extremely abundant, wing streamliner, and but you lean towards the historical and the Portland rose and you know, the Colorado patterns, that not so much prospector, because there's a ton of that, but the Kurokani. Anyway, we all know that this is very regional. We collect what we love based a lot on where we're from. And so for those of us on the West Coast, it's the narrow gauge and that sort of thing. On the East Coast, and I don't want to discount East Coast. We've got early roads there, and there was certainly some narrow gauge out there as well. But you do collect based on where you're from. So that's what makes New York Central great to the guy out east, and Denver and Rio Grande great to us out here. So, but quality and rarity.
Fantastic. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up. All four of you all have given your time and thought and effort into this, so I'm going to give you a few seconds. Starting with Russ, tell us when the next show is and what the schedule's like.
It's June 11th. So it's the second Sunday in June at the Kane County Fairgrounds. Always the second Sunday, and the October show is always the third Sunday in June, again at the Kane County Fairgrounds.
And Russ, I can't fully commit now, but I will tell you that, and for RCAI members, Jameson Kahn, our Southeast Regional VP, he and I were talking. We're going to try to get to the show in June. For those of you who can't make it, we'll live feed the show this year.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
We're going to try every way we can to get there. So,
and if you guys would like a table, I'll give it to you for free.
We appreciate that on top of the organization.
For
Dirk,
the club.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Not Chad personally. I'm not going to be hawking.
That's right.
I'm still in the hoarding phase. Dirk, I think you've got an auction coming up with some McHugh stuff.
Yes, and we may have one more, and then that'll finally be it. But also we have, I'm plugging behind me here a bunch of EMD illustrations we've moved that date back to accommodate this group of original paintings from the Electromotive Division, General Motors, their styling department. And so that's finally set for March 18.
Outstanding.
March 11. I'm sorry, March 11.
March 11. Stay tuned. Eric, I know you and Jason always have something cooking.
Yeah, we got, February 19th, Buena Park show out here in the West Coast. We got that. They're also going to be doing another one in October. We did the first one last year. So the second one in October at the Santa Fe San Bernardino Depot. So shows take a little while to get off the ground, but as far as a venue for the Western fan or the Santa Fe fan, it's a great place. So we're hoping to get more crowd in there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, my favorite part, and I told Jason this, when you all did the show back in the fall at the depot, it was really neat because it was impossible to tell what the exhibits were versus what the vendors were. So that was, what a perfect place to have a Railroadiana show.
It's awesome. It's really cool. So I, encourage anybody to come out if they can make it. Definitely come out.
Absolutely. And Sue, I know it's getting about time.
Auction 115 is hopefully going to the printer next week sometime, so I should be opening it up several days after that. Again, another, a lot of wonderful things from the Craig Narrows estate, as well as some more nice pieces from Frank's estate collection. I don't mean to say estate, I apologize. But I have over 700 locks to sell from Frank. So I'll be in business for a few years selling Frank's locks, but it should be a nice auction. I'm looking forward to it and hope to have it. I don't have a close date yet, but it should be opening the first week of February.
Well, fantastic. And, in closing, I do want to point out that that all four of these folks are members of RCAI, been active members of RCAI, supportive of our organization. Diane Hoffman, who is listening, the former president, Roger Hoffman. Diane helped coordinate this event and helps coordinate all the Zoom events. So Diane put this together, and again, we're appreciative to have the four of these folks join us tonight and give their expertise and experience. Nowhere else in the hobby, I think, are you going to see or hear from four people with this much experience in dealing Railroadiana and knowing the economics and the forecast of the hobby. So I personally want to thank all of you all for doing this. This has been, you can tell by the attendance, we're over. I know we're over. We're 20 minutes over. But people are hanging on, and this has been fascinating. So I really appreciate all of you all participating tonight.
Thank you.
Just to wrap up real quick, when you all start talking, everybody starts talking, we'll have this uploaded to YouTube. Joseph will have it uploaded. I'll send a link out via the RCAI list. We give RCAI members the first kind of view of this as part of your membership package, but you can share the video link to the public. They'll be able to see it as a way to help promote both the organization and the hobby. So we think it's really important, again, try to get young folks in that are sitting on YouTube and bored at night, or on Facebook, being able to see this is what the hobby is all about. But again, I'm going to close it up and thank everybody for your participation. Thank you all for your membership to RCAI and helping us make these Zoom conferences possible. If you have ideas or you want to do a Zoom conference, let us know. We try to do these quarterly, but there's no reason we can't do more throughout the year. We just have to have the content, the presenters to do it. A couple of reminders. Again, the next Zoom one will be our annual meeting on the 21st of February. I'll send out reminders via email for registration on that. And then I will go on and announce our next Zoom conference is going to be Jason Sanford. We've got to nail the date down, but it's probably going to be early April. And it's going to be focused on Colorado railroads, both history and memorabilia. So we've always have, as you heard tonight, a lot of interest in the Colorado roads, and Jason is going to do a great, history of the railroads and use the Railroadiana to supplement the story. So we really look forward to that. And Diane and I have talked quite a bit. We've got some exciting ideas and topics for the year, and stay tuned to the Express for those topics. And again, we're open to ideas. But hope everybody can join us on February 21st. Reminders will be going out. We'll have the results of the survey, and hopefully we can give you a test run of the new RCAI website. So that has been a long time coming. As many of you all know, our website has been stuck in 1998, but we'll at least come up to 2022 standards. So with that, I wish everybody a good night. Again, thanks to our presenters and thanks to everybody that participated.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you, too.
Good night.